Hello, and welcome to the Healing Dreams Project, exploring projective dreamwork for your health and wholeness, with hosts Billie Ortiz and Dr. Royce Fitz. I am the producer, Viviana, and today we have a special guest. Her name is Carla Blowey. She is a certified dreamwork facilitator, certified through the Marin Institute for Projective Dreamwork with Jeremy Taylor. She's the author of Dreaming Kevin, The Path to Healing. Since 1994, Carla has coordinated and facilitated bereavement support groups, camps, and workshops and volunteer training for children and adults. An exceptional speaker, Carla has presented programs and workshops in person and online on dreams, grief, healing, and after-death phenomena, writing a memoir and self-publishing, and served as editor-in-chief / columnist for Living with Loss magazine. Everybody, help me welcome Carla Blowey.
So glad you're here,
Yeah.
Carla.
Thank you for the
Being
invitation. Thank you.
Well, we always like to start tell us a bit about your story about how you got into dreams and why dreams have become so important in your life.
Okay. I began this journey 31 years ago as a bereaved mother who took the road less traveled. And it turned out to be the high road because I chose the path of self-discovery and spiritual growth. And it led to healing the wounds of grief in my body, my mind, my heart, and my soul. And so when I say that I began the journey 31 years ago, I really mean that to be a significant point of the timeline in my life, which marks the death of my son, Kevin, but also my awakening from the illusions that I had of death and the afterlife, and my appreciation for dream work as a tool for healing. And that significant event of the loss of a child and the dreams that came from that really became the organizing principle of my life. And it all began that day with a prophetic and a precognitive dream about him. And within 12 hours, that nightmare became a nightmare in the truest sense of the word. But nonetheless, it was a dream in which I was given knowledge about, an event in my immediate future, and that was his death. But it was also about the transition that would occur for both of us in the execution of our spiritual contract individually with each other and with the divine. And less than 12 hours after I had that nightmare, Kevin died in a bike truck accident in the driveway of our neighbor's home. And the nightmare had presented some of those pieces to it, but it was very archetypal and numinous. I was devastated by it just as a nightmare because I'd been studying dreams, but not certainly to the extent that I would have understood that.
Right.
And it was like anything I had ever experienced, and its truth resonated throughout my being, and I was just overwhelmed by guilt. And so I mistakenly thought that it was a warning that I had ignored, out of fear. And, I suffered greatly for that misperception because I believed I was responsible for his death. But, I learned that I had to trust that in my dream world, my God would never take me where God's grace would not protect me. And so I then felt compelled to really look at that. And I realized that my ego had written its own story and produced this nightmare because I was too afraid to see the real interpretation and the prophetic message of the dream. And that was that Kevin was being called to fulfill his destiny, and I was being called to pursue mine. And so living that nightmare, I was more awake than I'd ever been in my life. And it gave me this in-depth look at the status of my soul. And so that just sort of rolled into a lot of therapy and a lot of work, and eventually working with other bereaved parents and being a part of support groups and such. And then it led to writing because I was journaling so much. And then after I self-published the book, Dreaming Kevin, the Path to Healing, I thought, I can't possibly be the only one who knows this. And I felt compelled to share and to help other bereaved parents who might have had the same experience. And so then that rolled into, conferences and workshops. And then I found Jeremy and you, Billie.
Oh, well, thank you. Yes. Thank you.
And realized that with that certification, that Jeremy was teaching and I was doing it already. I just didn't know it.
Right.
And I was doing it in a different way in bereavement support than had been done traditionally. Some of that, was a great realization. And others of it was like, oh, this is a lot of work.
Yes.
So anyway, so that's it in a nutshell, I guess.
Just for our listeners who may not know your complete story, I'm just wondering, how old was Kevin? And if you wouldn't mind maybe sharing Dreamer's choice of the dream and a little bit more depth.
Okay. Kevin was 5.5 years old at the time of his death. There were so many pieces of it that were already in play before or leading up to the nightmare. And I didn't know that, until retrospect. You just don't know until, when things are supposed to be revealed to you, And so the night before the dream was it was unlike anything I'd ever had. And it was illustrating some aspects of where the accident might be, but for the most part, it was very archetypal in its sense. And there were many things about it that, I just didn't understand. There was a messenger. There was a cult group that had come to take him. There were just a lot of pieces to it. If you want, I could certainly read an aspect, part of the dream, but I don't, know how much time you have for that.
Well, whatever feels right for you, but go ahead, Royce.
Well, as I'm listening to you, Carla, and also doing what we have to do, which is to step into this, I have no choice except to step into the little that you've shared, and the overwhelming magnitude of this kind of experience. Again, for me, it's out of the realms of my imagination. I can sort of get in that direction, and I cannot go there because I've never been in that experience like that. And hearing you describe, Carla, the thoughtful soul searching that you experienced even prior to having this nightmare, this sleeping nightmare about losing Kevin, and then the thoughtful reaction of that point on feels so heavy. And I think what I also pick up is this is not all of who you are. This is not all of who we are.
Mhm.
And somehow the preceding stuff that happened before this nightmare and then Kevin's death and the stuff that happened after, there is an attunement that I experience you have, that you had and have, that added to your ability to process in a healing way something that is beyond imaginable for any of us to believe that we can walk a path like that and come out. Well, we don't ever come out, to continue in a way of healing and joy and meaning and beauty. That's how this impacts the little I know, impacts me with the little I know of what you've just shared.
Thank you for that, Royce. That really touches my heart that you have that level of intuitiveness to it, and can certainly relate in your own way to, in an empathetic and compassionate way to it. I think that at the time I was 33 years old. I had a 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I was immersed in my little life and my little family, and yet I had this part of my life with dreams that I didn't talk about much because it wasn't understood, or it was misrepresented, or, oh, there she goes again, she's got those crazy dreams. And so the little bit that I was doing before this was really a gift, because I met a really important mentor, spiritual and dream mentor at that time, who I was able to, connect with almost immediately after I had the nightmare, not knowing that, she was placed there divinely. And just looking at all the other people that showed up in my life as support, that's where what opened up to me in the whole dream process was about, this isn't happening to me. My perception is, at the time, of course, this is something that's happening to me. And the reality and the truth to that was that this is something, and it's hard for people to hear, but then I know I signed up for, that was a spiritual agreement among all of the players, among all of the people. And once I got that piece, I didn't understand it, but I knew it to be a truth. It's like that aha factor that we talk about, what in dream work. I know something to be true. I have that aha. I did have that aha moment, and the right people were in place at the time to support me with that and say, okay, yes, go with this. Because it was the only thing that made sense to me. So the question wasn't why me, it was really why not? Why not me? It's happening to parents all over the world. What makes me so special that it wouldn't happen to me?
And so in my version of all that, I hear that there was a calling that came to me through the dreams and through the tragic loss of imagining myself as the mother having tragic loss of my 5-year-old child. And I was called in order to help other parents, and specifically helping other parents, bereaved parents, through listening and paying attention to their dreams. So was that the piece that seemed as though it was your special part, was to, others were doing bereavement work, but who else was working with the dreams, with the bereavement work? And is that how it felt for you?
In the beginning, you mean? In the beginning?
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, I didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
No, I did not have I didn't have the maturity I didn't have the bandwidth for it, none of that. It just evolved as those people who were a part of the agreement showed up, and then it was the next level, and it was the next level. And I would say that, I do remember my grief counselor and another the dream mentor and spiritual mentor, and then another spiritual mentor that at that time said, you're going to be a teacher in this. You're going to teach others. There's no doubt about it. That's what this is. Some of this is about for you. And I thought, not me.
Yeah.
That isn't me. I can't even remember to brush my teeth.
Yeah.
I can't. It's a concerted effort every day to put my feet to the floor and make sure that my daughter gets off to school, and that she doesn't, that she doesn't lose us, that she doesn't lose our connection, our family. She's already lost so much. I wasn't thinking about any of that.
Right.
And then as those wonderful companions on the journey came into my life, it just evolved. And then all of a sudden I was, in the middle of it. And I attribute, first of all, the grief counseling that I had. My grief counselor, Mary, I had actually worked with her 5 years before when my mother had died. And she was the first person. I live in a small town. She heard about it immediately. She came immediately to me, and she was the first person I told the dream to.
And I'm interested, what was her reaction? Because sometimes dreams, as we know, are dismissed as meaningless or not so great, not that profound or whatever. So what was her reaction then? Was she accepting?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
yeah,
good.
absolutely. And she did not have prior dream work, experience. She really didn't. But she was intuitive enough and empathetic enough and compassionate enough to know that she knew a bit of my story anyway.
Yeah.
To know, oh, I've been called. I've also been called to do this. And it was a profound experience to have that kind of support.
Wow.
Early on.
Beautiful.
I've met so many bereaved parents who have not had that, and they've not been able to connect with a grief counselor or a spiritual mentor who is willing to go to that depth, and Mary was willing to go to that depth with me.
Excellent.
Carla, one of the things I keep hearing over and over in how you are being present with all of that you are, is how intentional you've been for many, many years, even before Kevin's death. This sense of curiosity, the sense of wonder in the midst of pain. It's one thing to be in awe of, a landscape or some other wonderful kind of experience. What I also hear you saying, though, is that you've been in awe about life, period, for a long, long time. And that seems to have been fertile ground. In dream work, we sometimes talk about the alchemy, the stuff that is constantly being used to bring us our version of gold, the gold of life. And so when your mother died, and you had this deep work already going with your spiritual counselor or your grief counselor, and then this is a projection in my dream. This is like I had these inklings of something else, that the molecules kept emerging and fitting together. And then when this other awful event happened, to step into this, and not with not with ease and not with beauty,
Right.
to step into this with all, in my dream, with all of the humanness that I am, to be enraged, be falling apart, to, in a sense, emotionally, spiritually die also. And I gave myself permission to go there, not easily, not willingly, and stumbling down that awful pit. And that sense of being able to stay with this fullness of my humanness also allowed me to experience levels that I had no idea in my dream that I could even touch or experience. And this is how I experience you as the dreamer, in the present, going through.
Thank you for that, Royce. Thank you. There's so much truth to what you just said. When I began to do the rollback of my whole life.
What an interesting phrase. Began to do the rollback. How powerful that sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it was the dream piece that I realized was my anchor all along, even though I hadn't talked about that much over the years, until I started to dabble and was taking some workshops and stuff beforehand. But I could roll it all the way back to age 3. Wow. Where I can remember that dream at age 3 that I believe was the forerunner of that recognition of, the recognition that there was this destiny piece for me. Mm-hmm. And when I remembered that dream and saw that there were elements of that dream that were also a part of this nightmare, it just sort of blew me away, and I didn't want to accept that in the beginning. I didn't want to accept it. But again, it was that gut level thing of, wait a minute, this is a truth. This is a truth, and you can't get away from that. And if there's one thing that grief does, it makes you present. Yeah. It makes you present to right now. And as much as, I thought I might have been, living in the past of grieving what had my life that, I thought I had lost, I really was present. There wasn't any future. I didn't see a future. It was right now. And so I guess it was intentional, on a whole nother level, but I can't say that it was conscious, that I was aware of any of that.
I'm a little curious about the after death phenomenon piece. Do you care to speak a little bit about that?
And I'll jump back to what Royce just said too. The first dream that I had about Kevin was within the first 24 hours. So I'd had that nightmare where, I encounter the cult woman who is trying to take my children, and we run, and the children and I try to get away. I think I'm back in my house. I think I'm safe again. And turns out there she is, waiting in the attic for me. trying to pull up a word here. The profoundness of dreaming Kevin and knowing that it was real was half the battle, because I knew that he still existed. 31 years later, when that comes up for me, to know that first dream within the first 24 hours, he still was alive in the somewhere. And I held on to that, as awful and horrific as the waking nightmare was. I had that piece, and I knew that was a truth. And then those dreams just kept coming. The visits, didn't know they were visits at the time. I just knew that I was having these experiences of being with him, and that our connection, our love, that unconditional love from him was still there. Our relationship still existed, some in the somewhere for him, but in the present for me. So that was half the battle, really. And it always has been. That has been the piece that has been my anchor. Other bereaved parents have not been as fortunate in their beginnings to have had that. I don't know why I was. I don't know. I can't explain that. But when that comes for them, again, it's half the battle. It's like, okay, I know this to be a truth. I know that my loved one, my child, exists somewhere. Now, how do I get through the rest of my day? How do I get through the rest of life? And then it becomes, how do I proactively live a healthy and productive life? How can I do that? And those are challenges every day. I couldn't imagine back then living the next 40 years like that, with that deep, intense pain. And I said, I don't want to do this. Just take me now. I don't want to be here to do this. But 31 of those 40 years has passed. And the dream work and the companions on the journey and Kevin as my spiritual coach has made all that happen for me.
Beautiful.
So that afterlife phenomena, that's a big word. It sounds like woo, but it's just for me, it's just a continuation of the relationship, a continued relationship with our loved ones, metaphysical, beyond the physical, whatever we just want to call for that.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I hope that answered your question. I have a tendency to go on and on, so because I'm really passionate about it. So stop me or edit. edit.
No, it was perfect. Thank you.
So, Carla, would you like to share with us now a more recent dream that you want to work with us live and in person here on the podcast?
I would. Yes, I would. When I saw the episode that you did about departed loved ones,
Mm-hmm.
and that was back in May, there was a series of dreams that were happening for me about my dear uncle who was dying, and that podcast started tripping things for me, triggering things for me. And anyway, he was 96. And back in January, I'd had a dream that about him and my father. And then there was another dream, who is also deceased, who was deceased then. And then another dream about my father and my mother, again, both deceased, and my uncle. And so there was, again, this leading up to the dream that I had about him when he got sick. Back in January, he was absolutely fine. He was fine until May, really. He was having a little concerns about some heart issues. But at 96, he was still driving, living a fairly active life. And then all of a sudden, so earlier in the week, I had a phone call with him and had a delightful conversation with him. But he had, for the first time, expressed to me this concern that he had about his health. And that night I had this dream. About a week later, then he ended up ill and in the emergency room and headed for surgery for this particular heart issue. And the night or the day of the surgery, it was the day of the surgery, I had this dream. And I title it, The Light, Oh, the Light. Do you want me to begin?
Yes, go ahead, please.
I dreamed that I was paddling a small boat on a narrow canal through two buildings. The canal is dimly lit until the canal waters widen into a narrow river, and I'm in daylight. As I'm paddling, I turn around to see what's behind me. Uncle Joe is also in the boat, seated at the back. He's having difficulty paddling, and I realize the back of the boat is sinking. He's in the water up to his thighs. I turn back to the front and I start paddling faster to get him to the other side. There is a low bridge to my left heading to the other side. I turn back to see if he's okay, and I tell him not to worry, that I'm paddling faster. Suddenly, the area opens up with more light and reveals giant tulips growing up out of the water. The tulips are gigantic in vivid colors of yellow, pink, red, and purple on either side of this passageway. I call back to Uncle Joe and I say, "Are you seeing this?" The back of the boat isn't sinking as much now, and he's sitting higher. He is absolutely mesmerized by the sight. His arms raised about chest high. I flash on how familiar the look on his face seems, because I've seen it before. And then I remember it is the same look of awe and reverence I witnessed in him when I took him to Telluride several years ago during a fall visit. During that visit, he had asked me to stop several times so that he could get out and see the light. He was fascinated by it. He kept saying how there was just something about the air in these mountains that made the light reflect so beautifully. I was humbled to be in his presence, the presence of an artist who sees the world through a creative lens. Well, in the dream, I keep paddling, and now I'm about halfway, turning back to check on him again. He's sinking again, and the water is up to his chest now. He's still trying to paddle, but I don't see oars in his hands. I see the edge of the shore ahead, and I'm almost there, paddling hard and fast to get him to the other side. At the shoreline edge, next to the end of the bridge, there is a narrow pathway or sidewalk that is dimly lit. When I wake up, I know that this is the beginning of the end. And I'm probably not going to see him again in this waking life. I'm conflicted about that because my heart wants to get on a plane and say goodbye. And I realize now that the dream was showing me my role, I'm humbled to realize that my role was to help him make this transition, to get him halfway there in the spiritual world. And I'm so happy that he was connected enough to reach me. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now, but I trust that my dreams will tell me so.
Wow. And did I have any other dreams as the dreamer of my uncle, or was this the last dream before he passed?
Before that,
Yeah.
I'd had these three dreams before that. And those involved my parents, my father,
Okay.
and my mother, then my mother and my father, and let's see, the two, yeah. So there were two dreams before that.
Wow.
So if I could ask a couple of questions, as I am experiencing the dream, it sounds like, and I'm not sure, that as the dreamer, you were describing the dream and then moved into waking life and then back into the dream, or was all of this a dream from beginning to end that you read?
There was the piece about remembering in the dream. It was
so
like,
in the dream, I'm remembering about Telluride. And
yes, I'm remembering about Telluride.
Gotcha.
It's like a flash, but it's like, it's this whole story,
right.
comes
Right,
to life.
but in the dream, I'm doing the row my boat here, and the memory of Telluride and my uncle begins. And
Yes.
a question, in the projective work that we do, I'm curious about Uncle Joe. How would he be described? How do I describe him?
Oh, a man of grace. He was our patriarch. He was my mother's oldest brother. Hilariously funny, an artist. He was a graphic design artist in the 60s and 70s and a sculptor. He was like a second father to me when my dad was in the Army, and so he was gone a lot. Generous, kind, giving, family, the go-to, very active, just hilariously funny. I have to, oh my gosh. And gosh, he just got the best health of all of his siblings. He was, a brother of 7, and they're all gone. He has one sister left. They made it to 96 and 93. It's unbelievable.
Well, as I experience the story of my Uncle Joe, and it's so where I go is as I am listening to this dream, I quite literally, I'm in this flow. There's a lot of flow in the dream with the paddling and the water and the lilies and the flooding. This dream for me is so easy to take literally. And I do not doubt for a second that there are literal strands in this dream for me. One of the pieces, though, this again, my projection, is it's easy for me to imagine my Uncle Joe. It's easy for me to be with him. This is so easy. And I'm so honored and privileged to be a part of of Uncle Joe's dying process that I'm called. So the easy is what almost trips me up in my projection. So it's like, okay, how do I look in my spiritual sense? How do I look like Uncle Joe? How am I like this being that I know is Uncle Joe in the dream, and is also a part of me that perhaps I how do I say this? That I don't quite embrace as my identity. That he is such in the waking world, so amazing. I couldn't possibly be like that. And yet in the dream world, in the projective world, the gift is, and I get goosebumps, I am like that. I am this Uncle Joe that is both behind me as I am paddling, and is also in a process of being aware of life in ways that I sometimes I don't see. That I'll stop with that for the
Thank you
moment.
for that. I would say that the hit for me on that, Royce, is that I also started out as an artist in painting and creatively like that. And so he and I shared that, we did share that, but certainly, could I put myself at the level that I have him, elevated to this, oh gosh, no, I certainly couldn't see myself that way. But the dream tells me, as you say, perhaps maybe there's a few aspects that I can.
I'm aware of how hard it is for me to say I am Uncle Joe.
Yeah.
And so that would be for me a kind of a negative aha. It's like, oh, I don't want to say that. No, I can't. And Uncle Joe is me in my dream.
Yeah, that's definitely the other layer to this, and what can I own about it?
Right. And that's the thing about the bright shadow. I was listening very carefully to the adjectives to describe Joe, and it's like, oh, he's a man of grace, he's funny, he's all these really positive, hugely positive projections. Great heart, the best health, all this. And every time that I say that about anybody in my life, it is as Royce is saying, it's difficult sometimes for us to own the more positive qualities than to realize that the darker shadow qualities. So in my version of it, Uncle Joe brings me a great gift. Where do I begin to own my creativity and my grace and my humor and all of these things? As much as I see it in him, it's so much easier for us to see things in other people than for us to embrace it ourselves. And you remember this line from Jeremy. He used to say it all the time. Just because it's projection doesn't mean it's not true.
Yes.
We project intelligence on people who are intelligent. We project good sense of humor on people who are really funny. So all of these projections are correct, and true. How do they live in me as well? And if as you mentioned, our podcast about dreaming of departed loved ones, we touched on that too. Is that yes, there's a big, huge piece of it it's a visitation dream. My loved one has come in order to assure me that they're still okay. And then there's that other part of it. Why this dream now? Why do I
this dream now? Yes.
And
yes.
why am I as Carla? Why am I the one who received the Uncle Joe dream and see him struggling in the canoe as he sinks more and more? It's like there's huge metaphor there about the passage of time through the canal and the life force energy and being being absorbed into the other world, if that in my version of it. And then all these nuances of light that change throughout the dream are very interesting as well. But I wanted to ask about tulips. Do tulips mean anything in particular to me as the dreamer?
No, not really. My hit on that was just that it was May and it was tulip season. They were blooming around town.
Sure.
It was just a seasonal thing, and it struck me, the time is now. it's not next spring.
Right.
It's not, you know, where if they were sunflowers, I might have gone to August.
Sure.
There's a timing piece to this. So yeah, that's where I went with it.
Well, and for me
Well,
too, tulips,
sorry.
just one more thing, that tulips also, we have to plan ahead, plant them like so far ahead before they bloom. And so there's some kind of piece there about timing, as you're saying. There's a timing, and also allowing the something to break open and bloom from underground. And the fact that they're so
Oh,
huge, this for me always,
they were
yeah,
like this.
yeah. So
Yeah.
anything that's larger than life, for so often in dream image, makes me think of the archetypal realm. And so I've now entered into, I'm outside of the normal size tulips. I'm into the archetypal size tulips.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like, so there's something about that. It's like a death and rebirth piece, because the bulb has to go into the ground, be buried for months before it comes out, and
Before it
gives
comes
us,
out.
and it gives us that hope for when spring, you know, when the tulips, they don't last that long either.
Right.
Their petals fall off pretty fast. So it's like the daffodils and the tulips come up, and the hyacinths and all these little delicate flowers come up out of the ground, and they're just there briefly, you know, for us to go, yay, you know, spring has sprung again, you know. So
Yes.
there's some piece about that, about, and why they have to be so vivid and large in the dream.
Yeah. Yeah. And certainly we know in dream work that those things that are larger than life, or that are, that when color is really vivid and all of that, it's underscoring the importance of, you know, that moment, and seeing, I mean, I can still see the way that light, that light
Mm.
and how vivid the recollection was of the Telluride moment.
Right.
You know,
And that was fall colors then, right? With, he was seeing the fall colors of the trees. Was that?
yes, it was in October. Yeah, September, October. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So another sort of change of season, but giving eternal hope, because we know it'll always come back. You know, the leaves fall off, but we know they're going to come back the next time. So there's that hope of resurrection and rebirth, if it were my dream, for both images.
Love that. Love that. I'm
Or,
writing notes.
So this piece about the tulips also, it captures my imagination, that as I am in the dream, both of me, Uncle Joe, and Carla the dreamer, Royce the dreamer, that as I am enraptured, captured by the beauty of the tulips, I suddenly don't sink as much. I rise again.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of the Old Testament allusions to death. I trying to remember the scripture exactly, and I can't, but the wispiness of life, that life is like a blade of grass in the spring, and the the harsh summer wind comes and it just dissipates, and how temporary. And in the dream, this feels, oh yes, a reminder of my temporariness in this kind of experience, and in the beauty of my temporariness. And I feel buoyant for a moment. These tulips, I wanted to kind of blurt out as I was listening, these are like lily pads. These tulips are kind of, in my imagination, growing up out of the water. And
yes, they were.
Yeah,
they were
and it's
coming up out of the water.
And how weird, how beautifully weird that is. That in the waking world, I know where tulips come from. In the sleeping world, dream world, they just arise out of the water, out of the flood of my emotions, out of the flow of the energy of life, and how this flow has the beauty and the agony of life all together. I'm rowing, and I'm dealing with it, and I'm sinking. What a better metaphor of life is that this has all of me, all of life in one short scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking the other day about how vital it is for me to want to be fully alive, in all ways, the beauty and the ugliness, to experience all of life. And this dream reminds me of how the journey of life is to be experienced. I don't have a lot of control. Sometimes it looks like I do, and maybe I do. Other times I'm simply in the flow. I do my best to go with the flow. And a lot of times I have no choice. The flow is beyond me. And so that allows me to give in to the energy and to the flow of life, to embrace this. And at the same time, I try to fight it, or I try to control it. And even that I need to give blessing to, because I am so limited. I am so human. And there is a blessing of being fully human and fully alive and fully afraid and fully dying.
Mm-hmm.
The paddling part, for what was happening in my life at that time too, in the months leading up to that gotta paddle faster. I've got to get through this. I've got to get through this. And I had been doing a lot of that in other aspects of my life. And, you're against the current, just that paddling against the current. And that's how it felt in the dream too. It didn't matter how fast I was paddling. I wasn't getting us across that, to the other side any faster. And and I'm just now, as I say it out loud, recognizing that sort of that let it go thing. Come on, can you float? Can you just float a little bit, Carla? Do you have to push through everything? Just stop and smell the roses, but stop and see the tulips, stop and see the light. And then the fact that I was getting to experience that with my uncle, on that deeper level. Here's the piece that I want to share with you too, that came from, like I said, I didn't know what was next. I didn't know what to do next or whatever, but as his health declined really quickly in the next 7 days, we didn't think that we were going to even be able to talk to him, because he could barely talk. And then the day before he died, 2 days before he died, we were able to have a FaceTime call with him. He was alert enough and conscious enough. And so, oh my gosh, it was so emotional. And my husband and my daughter spoke to him first, and then I waited to go last. And I wasn't anything that I thought ahead about what I was going to say to him, except I love you. Thank you for the gift you've been in my life, and all that. I was able to get that out. And then all of a sudden I reminded him of our trip to Telluride.
Oh, wow.
And I said, Uncle Joe, do you remember when we went, when you came to visit and we went to Telluride, and you were fascinated by the light? And he did. In that moment, he remembered. And he did, he sort of brought his hand up and he said, oh, and he touched his face. Well, his face, but what he usually did was like this, like we're Italian, so he was, that always the hand. But even in that, he was able to bring his hand up and go, "Oh, yes." I remember that light was so amazing, so beautiful. And so I didn't plan to tell him to remind him of that or anything, but then I realized that that was what I was supposed to do with the dream.
Wow.
Was to remind him of that, and to go for the light, to look for the light, to be embraced by that.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful.
it just
So I
fascinating
I
work.
can't help but love Uncle Joe. And I need to keep talking about my projection of Uncle Joe. This is about my journey. This is about me, how amazing I am. And through the apparition of Uncle Joe, through the mirror, I see myself. And I'm imagining in my dream, and as I'm dying, Uncle Joe knows this about my lovely niece, Carla. And that part of what I'm trying to do is to get Carla, to that part of me, to embrace the beauty of who I am in her own unique way.
Yeah. Mm.
Oh,
Beautiful.
that's his parting gift to me.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not just that I have a calling. I do have a calling to do however I do this dying process, gifting with others. I am receiving this from my Uncle Joe as well. I am yearning for this for myself as well. And Uncle Joe more perfectly shows it to me in the mirror.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a big hit.
Yeah, me too. I got
Big aha.
It's 107 outside, and I have goosey bumps.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing your
Thank you
dream,
for
Carla.
both of you.
It feels as though this is the time where we could bring it to an arbitrary close. There's one last thing I wanted to say was I remember one word that stuck out.
Viviana is.
Oh, sorry, Viviana. Go ahead.
No, I'm so struck with the title, "The Light, Oh the Light." And I, as Viviana, I am an artist, and I see the beautiful dreamer that is Carla, my friend, and I see so much beauty and light that she has created. So if this were my dream, yes, the most poignant part is the light. The light is in the title, the light of Telluride that I shared with my creative, funny, hilarious, and insightful, graceful, magnificent, noble man, my uncle. And he saw the light. There was something about the air that the light makes it so beautiful. And I would see this as an opportunity for the artist inside of me that lives, that resides, that vibrates, that is everything, to see the world through that creative, magnificent, beautiful lens that uncle, my Uncle Joe, who lives inside of me and has taught me so much. In the dream, I'm struck with the narrow passageway that then becomes dimly lit. The different sides of this light. And it reminds me of day and how our own worlds can look so different in day and then night. And it's the passage of time, the moon and its inconstance, and the life and rebirth, death and resurrection. So it's got all of this inside this very beautiful, insightful, profound dream. I'm so thankful to have heard this dream.
Oh, thank you. That was beautiful, Viviana. Thank you very much. Wow. Oh, um, you know, that to your point of being able to see the world differently, I know that's been ever, well, the goal since Kevin died, to see it all differently. And in these last couple years, it's been difficult to navigate the pain and the suffering, that the world is enduring right now. And at that time, going back to what was happening in my life at that time too, it was not just the personal things that were going on, but also the world at large, the global peace, and Ukraine, our country, the divisive, all of that was very, very difficult to navigate and try to flip it, to keep seeing it differently. Like, okay, there is a purpose, there is a reason. And
Right.
Where's the hope? Yeah, where's the hope? And it is in that light.
Well, for me, this is bringing up again the grief of our world in our collective sense. This dream about Kevin, this dream about Uncle Joe, and how Viviana was holding up the beautifulness of the light. How can I have how can I have hope? Not a fleeting hope, authentic, grounded belief that there is beauty and grace and healing as this world is suffering. How can I be present in the midst of this, in the midst of the suffering, in the midst of this river of life? Be present, even as I suffer, even as I yearn for healing to come. And is healing coming? I have to ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
And if I ask that question, that's okay, because grace says I am fully human and I need to ask that. I hurt. The grief hurts. The world hurts.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Thank you all so much.
I can't help. Maybe this is too literal, but merrily, 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 merrily,
Yeah.
life is but a dream.
dream.
I know. How could we not go there?
That's true.
That never even occurred to me. But
Oh, really?
that's going in my
A
notes.
little rowboat. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Viviana. That was somewhere back there for me too. It's like, oh, it's too trite to say it. And you had the courage to say it. So bless you. Just say it.
I love it.
Now, Billie, you get to try to draw this to an arbitrary
Yes.
close.
I was going to open it for everybody to say their last comments, but it was the first thing that came to me was, there's a bridge that shows up in the dream too. And whenever I hear,
yes, thank you.
Whenever I hear the word bridge and it's referred to in a dream, it so often is talking about how do I bridge paradox in my life, because a bridge, I need both sides. So in order to love anyone in our lives, we understand that there will be loss. So there's this grief and praise piece for me that comes in. I know that with Joe, he was at 96. So realistically, I know there wasn't a whole lot of time left, but boy, I had that special moment of being able to remember the beauty of Telluride, and then I have all these wonderful memories. So we hold that peace and love in our heart, but we know that every time we love somebody, there's going to be that time where they may not be around anymore. And so deeply and profoundly, I've, as Carla, experienced that with my son Kevin, and this sense of that he's still with me. He, as I say, he's my spiritual guide on the other side, and now I'm called to help others in this position. So there's something about appreciating the moment that I'm with someone, to be very clear that I'm grieving at the moment I'm with them, because there is that always that possibility of, well, one day they won't be there, and one day I won't be there. So there's this feeling of, and I think that's part of the tulips, is because it's a temporal kind of situation. It's very, I think I heard Royce say that word a lot too. It's temporary, and for us to be present. And I heard Carla saying earlier, I've learned presence, if anything, with the grief. So just a reminder that it's fleeting. It's just fleeting, and just be present as often as we can and appreciate it. That's my dream.
Nice.
So, and of course we can't not think about the river Styx too. That's the
Yes.
coming across
Yes.
the river Styx.
Yeah.
So that's how and I even say I'm helping him get to the other side. So there's all of that too. So, and you as a dreamer, Carla, is there anything else you want to say finally about your dream, or anything we didn't touch on?
We don't have time for it, but there was I had another dream after this one that that very next night, and there's so many connecting pieces to it, and how it brought other people in to be able to companion him through his final transition. It was just powerful. It was powerful. So there's actually four dreams to this series, but this is the one I wanted to work with you, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much for giving me
Definitely
the deeper level. And it's something that I always take as the facilitator too, take that approach with bereaved parents. And you're so focused on the dream visit, so yearn to be with our deceased child or our deceased loved ones. We yearn for that physical touch. We yearn for that oh, it's them. And you just become so focused on that you miss the other details in the dream, where there's other messages, there's other layers there of what is unreconciled. Why this dream now? Yes. Why this message? Why this symbol? And all of that is designed to take us deeper.
Yeah, wonderful.
So it's a gift and it's a blessing. And
I appreciate, I'm imagining being a listener to this episode and how beautiful the descriptions are of dreams that come for health, healing, and wholeness through today, and that dreams are linked. And as the dreamer, I think it would be very hard for me to know which dream to choose, which dream is the best in this, podcast hour. And as my friend Carla has shared, she had 4 other dreams, or whatever the number was. And it's like, how does one choose? And the beauty and the grace of this kind of work is that, and it does not feel correct. However, the truth is correct. It doesn't matter which dream I choose, because all of these are linked. They are a part of our story, and they speak at all levels of who I am and all levels of our collective, all the levels of who we are. And so I know I will continue to dream more and more dreams that sort of look like this and look like a link. And it's like, okay, there we go. I am in this river of life, and every molecule touches another molecule and invites and supports and is absorbed by all of the above.
It's always just so exciting and fulfilling for me to be among other dream workers and to feel heard, to be seen, and to be present. So thank you very much.
Lovely.
All of you. Thank you.
Well, on that note, Carla, if someone were wanting to read your book, find out more about you, where can one do that?
Dreamingkevin.com. Also on Facebook, Carla Blowey, Instagram, a little bit, not much on there. I have starting up in the fall, probably in October, I'll start up again, the Dreamlight Cafe for bereaved parents, and we'll do that on Zoom. Have a wonderful group that we're sort of in our summer break right now. Would like to expand that and have other bereaved parents join us. Yeah, that's how dreamingkevin.com. Go there.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing everything. It's been
You're welcome.
very, very powerful. Very
Thank
beautiful.
you.
So, Billie, wakeuptoyourdreams.com.
That's it. Wakeuptoyourdreams.com. I've got 2 groups, one that meets in the evening and one that meets during the afternoons. The calendar's up on my website. I also help people to train to do dream work, and that's through the Rocky Mountain Institute of Projective Dreamwork, also on the website. And I have started in-person groups again. I'm going to do fall retreat.
Yay, we're doing those.
The fall retreat is going to be this October, the 14th through the 16th, and again, and it's at Peaceful Meadow Retreat Center here in Boulder. And again, all that information is on the website. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Billie. And roycefits.com. Tell us a little more, Dr. Royce.
Oh, now I'm tongue-tied. The tulips captured my words. So, well, yes, please go to my website, roycefits, FITTS.com. I'm a spiritual counselor and dream worker, and also clinical psychotherapist, licensed marriage and family. Do all of the above and have for many, many years. So I invite you to explore the dreams through my work as we work towards creating health, healing, and wholeness in individual experiences as well as our collective.
Royce also has an active and fun TikTok channel. I encourage you to check that out. I love your
Good prairie morning.
I love it. And I encourage you to visit his TikTok channel. I'm Viviana. I am the producer of Healing Dreams Project podcast. And we have a dreamer hotline that we'd love if you would like to share a dream with us. Please call in your dream. You have about 3 minutes to share a dream with us. The number is 720-573-9195. Again, 720-573-9195. And what else? I can be found at viviana.org. I'm a musician. That's my primary thing that I do in life, but I do love dreams. I found dreams and dove into the dreaming pool, shall we say, during my grand pause when my career was non-existent all of a sudden. So I found Billie online, and well, the rest is history. We created the Healing Dreams Project podcast a couple months ago, at the beginning of this year, maybe a couple months ago.
Yeah. March. I
Time is
think.
fluid.
Yeah,
March, okay.
somewhere around
And
there.
Time
if
is
you
fluid. That's right.
Yeah, if you enjoyed the podcast and care to subscribe, tell your friends, find us on Instagram, Facebook, and iHeartRadio, Pandora, YouTube. We are trying to be everywhere. And we would love to hear from you as well. So
Yeah.
with that, we thank Carla once again for joining us today.
Thank you for
And
having me.
until next time, happy dreaming.
Thank you.